A peculiar visitor. The old farm truck bounced and rattled along the dirt road, kicking up a cloud of dust in the late afternoon sun. Abigail Crenshaw gripped the worn steering wheel with firm, calloused hands as she guided it through the fields of wheat rippling in the light breeze. The 78-year-old had made this drive countless times before in her 5 decades tending this land. She was just pulling into the driveway of her old farmhouse when a low rumble sounded overhead. Looking up, Abigail's eyes widened at the sight of a sleek silver disk descending rapidly from the clouds. It swooped down low, hovering briefly over her fields before settling to the ground on 3 spindly landing legs. Abigail set the parking brake on the old truck and stepped out, wiping her hands on her overalls. She marched across the yard as a door arised open on the side of the strange craft, and a ramp extended to the ground. A tall, spindly figure emerged, with gray skin, large black eyes, and a bulbous head. It was clad in a form-fitting silver suit. "Greetings, Earthling," the alien said, its voice having an oddly refined accent. "I am Commander Xyloth of the Crethan Imperium. I have come to deliver an important message on behalf of my people." "Well, spit it out then," Abigail said impatiently, crossing her arms over her chest. "I've got chores that need doing." Xyloth blinked his large eyes in surprise at her gruff demeanor. Very well. I have come to inform you and your planet that you will soon be conquered by the mighty Crethan Imperium. Your world and your species will be assimilated. Resistance is futile." Abigail looked the slender alien up and down, a skeptical expression etched on her weathered features. "Is that so? Well, you don't look so tough. I've wrangled ornery bulls that were more threatening." The Crethan commander drew himself up indignantly. "I assure you, my appearance belies the true technological and military might of my species. You would do well to heed my warning, Earthling. Your leaders will be hearing from us soon." "Aha. Well, land somewhere else next time," Abigail said, turning back toward her house. "You're squashing my tomatoes." Xyloth watched incredulously as the old woman ambled back inside without a second glance. Unused to being so casually dismissed, he huffed and stormed back into his ship. The anti-grav engines fired up with a high-pitched whine, and the scout craft ascended into the sky. Abigail watched it disappear through her kitchen window, shaking her head. "I've got a bad feeling about this," she muttered to herself. "Looks like it might be time to get the old gear out of mothballs." An offer declined. 1 week later, a much larger Crethan vessel descended through the clouds over New York City. The alien craft, all sleek silver curves and glowing blue lights, came to rest delicately on the green lawn of the United Nations complex. Police and military scrambled to cordon off the area as news helicopters buzzed overhead. A larger delegation emerged this time, 24 Crethan soldiers in black armor at the lead, pulse rifles held over their narrow chests. Behind them strode several taller Crethans clad in flowing metallic robes, their bulbous heads held high. UN security escorted them into the large assembly hall, where the gathered world leaders waited in tense silence. The lead Crethan, still Commander Xyloth, took the central podium and activated his translator device. "People of Earth," Xyloth began, his amplified voice echoing in the cavernous space. "We come offering you a great opportunity. A chance to join the enlightened Crethan Imperium in a glorious cosmic union. You need only lay down your arms and surrender your sovereignty. Imagine the wonders we can show you, the technological marvels you can access, if only you accept your place as our subjects." UN Secretary General Annika Patel stood, her spine straight and eyes hard. "Commander Xyloth, I'm afraid you have severely misjudged the character of our species. We are not in the habit of surrendering our freedom, not to tyrants or despots on our own world, and certainly not to those from beyond our stars. I speak for all free people of Earth when I firmly decline your generous offer." Xyloth's eyes widened in shock as the other world leaders voiced their assent with Patel's declaration. "You misunderstand the precariousness of your position," he said, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. You cannot hope to stand against the military might of the Imperium. If you do not accept a peaceful transfer of power, we will have no choice but to take your planet by force." From the back of the assembly hall, a familiar gravelly voice rang out. "You heard the lady. We're not interested in being your subjects or slaves, or whatever you have in mind." Abigail Crenshaw strode down the central aisle, dressed in a crisp military uniform, ribbons and medals gleaming on her chest. "So I suggest you pack up your shiny ship and get the hell off our planet." Murmurs of surprise and confusion rippled through the gathering at the sight of the old woman confronting the aliens. Xyloth sputtered in outrage. "You, the farmer woman, you have no authority here." "That's General Abigail Crenshaw to you, little man," she snapped. "What did you really think the person who told you to buzz off lived in the middle of nowhere by accident? I've been keeping an eye on you Crethan snoopers since you first poked your gray noses into this star system." She turned to address the room. "I know these Crethans. Fought them back when I was a fighter jock in the Terran Defense Corps. They like to play at being refined and sophisticated, but they're just another band of resource-hungry imperialists, looking to strip mine any world they come across, and I'll be damned if they're doing it to ours." Xyloth trembled with barely contained rage. "You have sealed your fate, humans. Prepare for war." He spun on his heel and marched out with his delegation in tow. As the doors slammed shut behind the Crethans, Abigail turned to Patel and the other leaders with a wry smile. "Well, now that the diplomacy is out of the way, what say we get down to brass tacks on how we're going to kick their bony gray asses?" Unexpected resistance. The first of the Crethan warships arrived in near-Earth orbit a month later. Swarms of dart-like fighters poured from their hangar bays, screaming toward the planet's surface on plumes of bright plasma. Earth's orbital defense platforms lit up, railguns and particle beams, lancing out to meet the alien craft in silent explosions of fire and shrapnel. On the ground, air raid sirens wailed and searchlights stabbed up into the night sky. Anti-aircraft batteries thrummed to life, filling the air with tracer rounds. In bunkers and command posts across the globe, Earth's armies mobilized, ready to repel the Crethan landing forces. To the surprise of the alien commanders, human resistance proved far fiercer and more coordinated than their intelligence reports had predicted. They had expected a quick and easy conquest of a technologically and militarily inferior species. What they found instead were fighters that could match their own, a planetary defense grid that was fortified and unyielding, and ground troops armed with advanced weaponry of their own. In the war room of the Crethan flagship, Commander Xyloth paced anxiously, studying the holographic battle map as angry red icons denoting human forces continued to blink into existence. "This is not proceeding according to plan," he muttered. "The Earthlings are displaying uncharacteristic unity and military competence for a species at their stage of development." His tactical officer, a shorter Crethan with mottled gray skin, looked up from his console. "Sir, our predictive battle algorithms are struggling to adapt to the humans' unorthodox tactics. They're employing maneuvers and strategies not found in any of our databases." Xyloth hissed in frustration. "What of our landing parties? Have they been able to establish a beachhead?" The officer shook his bulbous head. "Negative, Commander. They're meeting extremely heavy resistance from human defenders, military and civilian alike. We've lost contact with several of them." On the blood-soaked fields of Kansas, Abigail Crenshaw crouched in a hastily dug foxhole, a battered pulse rifle cradled in her arms. Her silver hair was tied back in a tight bun, and a bandolier of power cells was slung across her chest. Around her, a ragtag militia of farmers and chalkkeepers exchanged fire with the advancing Crethan soldiers. "Hold the line," Abigail shouted over the din of energy weapons and explosions. "We give 'em an inch, they'll take the whole damn planet." She popped up from cover and squeezed off a burst of searing blue plasma bolts, dropping a Crethan trooper in his tracks. The remaining aliens hesitated, exchanging nervous glances. They had been told this would be a simple policing action against primitives. No one had said anything about geriatric human females with the ferocity of a cornered cougar. In space, Earth's fleet of sleek warships darted and wove through the Crethan formations, pummeling the larger alien vessels with concentrated railgun and missile fire. The human ships were smaller and less heavily armed, but they more than made up for it in speed and maneuverability. Slowly but surely, the tide of battle began to turn in humanity's favor. The Crethan commanders watched in disbelief as more and more of their ships winked out on the tactical displays, victims of the tenacious human defenders. On the ground, their landing forces were being driven back, cut off from support and supplies. In her foxhole, Abigail allowed herself a tight smile as she saw the Crethan troops start to falter and retreat. The spindly aliens leaked into their landing craft, desperate to escape the death trap this unassuming green world had become. She keyed her comm unit. "This is General Crenshaw to all units. The Crethan invasion is losing steam. Keep up the pressure and we'll send these little gray bastards running home with their tails between their legs. Earth will not fall on our watch." Abigail rose from the dirt, racked a fresh power cell into her rifle, and charged forward with a stubborn fire in her eyes that the Crethans would soon come to recognize all too well. The tables turn. In the weeks that followed, the war for Earth took a dramatic turn. Buoyed by their initial successes and united under a common cause, humanity began to push back against the Crethan invasion in earnest. Under the leadership of General Abigail Crenshaw and other seasoned military minds, Earth's armies went on the offensive. New human technologies and weapons, developed in secret over decades of clandestine preparation, were now unleashed upon the unsuspecting Crethans. Sleek fighter craft that could outmaneuver the alien ships, ground-based energy cannons that could punch through their shields, and power-armored infantry that could match the Crethans' strength all entered the fray. In orbit, Earth's reinforced fleet launched daring hit-and-run attacks against the Crethan warships, steadily whittling down their numbers. Strike teams of human special forces boarded the alien vessels, sabotaging key systems and sowing chaos and confusion among the crew. On the ground, human resistance cells and guerrilla fighters harried the Crethan troops at every turn. They laid traps, ambushed supply convoys, and turned the invaders' advanced technology against them. In the ruins of shattered cities and the depths of ancient forests, the battle for Earth was fought with grim determination. At the forefront of it all was General Abigail Crenshaw. She seemed to be everywhere at once, rallying troops, coordinating strikes, and leading daring missions deep into enemy-held territory. Her tactical brilliance and indomitable spirit quickly became the stuff of legend among both human and Crethan soldiers. It was during a briefing with Earth's military leadership that Abigail's true role in the conflict came to light. As holographic displays of new human weapons and technologies rotated above the war room table, she spoke up. "I know many of you have been wondering where these advanced systems came from," she said, her steely gaze sweeping the room. "The truth is, we've been preparing for this day for a long time. Ever since my first encounter with the Crethans decades ago, I knew they'd be back, and I made damn sure we'd be ready for them." Abigail went on to explain how she had leveraged her position as a retired military engineer to spearhead a secret program aimed at bolstering Earth's defenses. Drawing upon the knowledge gleaned from captured Crethan technology and her own brilliant mind, she had overseen the development of a new generation of weapons and equipment designed specifically to counter the alien threat. "We may not have the numbers or the raw firepower of the Imperium," Abigail said, "but we've got ingenuity, adaptability, and a stubborn refusal to roll over on our own goddamn planet. And that counts for a hell of a lot." Bolstered by this knowledge and their string of victories, Earth's forces redoubled their efforts. In space and on the ground, they met the Crethans head-on, matching the aliens' technology and tactics with their own. Slowly but surely, they began to turn the tide. Beaten back and bloodied, the Crethan fleet fell into disarray. Their commanders, unused to such fierce and prolonged resistance, struggled to adapt. Xyloth watched in mounting horror as his grand invasion force crumbled before the unbreakable will of the human defenders. In a desperate bid to salvage the situation, the Crethan High Command ordered a full retreat. Their remaining ships broke orbit and limped away from Earth, their hulls scared and battered. The soldiers on the ground, cut off from support and hounded at every turn, laid down their arms and surrendered en masse. As word of the victory spread, cheers erupted across the planet. In cities and towns, in the streets and in the fields, humans celebrated their hard-won triumph. They had faced the full might of a galactic empire and emerged unbowed, their freedom and way of life intact. Amidst the jubilation, Abigail Crenshaw stood atop a ruined Crethan landing craft, her hair whipping in the wind. She looked out over the cheering crowds, a faint smile on her weathered face. It had been a long and bloody struggle, but Earth had proven to the galaxy that it would not go quietly into the night. As the celebrations continued, Abigail's thoughts turned to the future. The Crethans had been beaten back, but she knew this was only the beginning. Earth had shown that it had the strength and the will to stand amongst the stars, and there would be challenges and opportunities alike in the years to come. But for now, there was a moment to breathe, to mourn the fallen and honor the heroes who had made this victory possible. General Abigail Crenshaw, the farmer-turned-soldier-turned-savior, looked to the sky and allowed herself to hope for a brighter tomorrow. A new understanding. In the aftermath of the great battle, an uneasy peace settled over Earth and the Crethan Imperium. Both sides, battered and bruised, withdrew to lick their wounds and ponder the new galactic order that had emerged. On Earth, the process of rebuilding began. Cities were reconstructed, infrastructure repaired, and the scars of war slowly began to fade. But the memory of what had been achieved, of the impossible odds that had been overcome, would linger in the hearts and minds of humanity for generations to come. For Abigail Crenshaw, there was little time to rest on her laurels. As the architect of Earth's defense and the hero of the hour, she found herself thrust into the spotlight, a role she accepted with her characteristic gruffness and humility. There were medals to be awarded, speeches to be made, and a planet to put back together. It was during this time that a most unexpected visitor arrived at Abigail's farm. Commander Xyloth, now a disgraced exile of the Crethan Imperium, came alone and unarmed, seeking an audience with the woman who had bested him. Abigail met him on the front porch of her old farmhouse, a cup of steaming coffee in hand. She regarded the alien commander with a mixture of wariness and curiosity as he approached. "You've got a lot of nerve showing up here," she said, her voice gruff but not entirely unkind. "Give me one good reason why I shouldn't just shoot you on sight." Xyloth held up his long-fingered hands in a gesture of peace. "I come not as a conqueror, but as a supplicant," he said, his voice heavy with fatigue and something that might have been respect. "I seek to understand the species that so thoroughly defeated my own." Abigail snorted. "Pull up a chair then. But if this is some kind of trick—" "No tricks," Xyloth assured her, settling into a creaky rocking chair. "Only talk, if you'll permit it." And so, over the course of a long afternoon and several pots of strong coffee, the two former enemies talked. They spoke of war and peace, of the follies of empire and the resilience of the downtrodden. They spoke of their own lives, of the paths that had brought them to this moment, on opposite sides of a conflict that had reshaped the galaxy. As the sun began to set over the fields, Xyloth rose to take his leave. "I think I understand now," he said, his gaze settling on the old woman who had become his unlikely confidant. "The strength of your species lies not in your technology or your numbers, but in your spirit, your refusal to submit to tyranny. It's a lesson my people could stand to learn." Abigail allowed a faint smile to tug at the corners of her mouth. "Well, maybe you can teach it to them. Lord knows we could all use a little more understanding in this big old universe of ours." The Crethan commander bowed deeply. "Indeed we could, General Crenshaw. Indeed we could." In the years that followed, A new era of peace and cooperation dawned between Earth and the Crethan Imperium. Trade routes were established, cultural exchanges initiated, and the old wounds of war began to heal. And at the center of it all was a most unlikely friendship between a battle-hardened human general and a humbled alien commander. The galaxy would never be the same, but maybe, just maybe, it could be a little bit better, thanks to the indomitable will of one stubborn old woman who had never learned how to back down from a fight. And so the story of Abigail Crenshaw, the hero of Earth, passed into legend. A reminder to all who heard it that the greatest strength lies not in the ability to conquer, but in the courage to stand firm in the face of impossible odds. A lesson that would echo across the stars for generations to come.